Good evening.
Good evening.
The text we're going to be in this morning is Luke, or this morning. I just said good evening. My nap wasn't good enough, apparently. We're going to be in Luke chapter 12. So if you would, turn with me there to Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 16, going to verse 21. Luke chapter 12. Beginning at verse 16. The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich towards God. If this story doesn't provoke a reflection for the materially minded person, nothing will. This parable is sometimes called the parable of the rich fool because of what God said to this man. But let's ask the question, why did God call him a fool? What reasons did he have to call him a fool? And we know that it is strong language. We can be condemned for referring to our brother as a fool. So I want to emphasize that this man did not call this man a fool because he was wealthy, because he was prosperous. He did not call him a fool because he was successful. I think there are a number of reasons that could be given, but I want to mention four specific ones that I think are fairly obvious from the text. He was a fool for thinking that he was in control of his own future. When I look closely at this text, I don't find God calling this man a fool for planning ahead, for working for his future. If you look at Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11, you'll find God praising the lowly ant that gathers in the summer and for winter stores and works all day long, planning ahead. It says, Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. God endorses and blesses hard work, beginning back in the garden with Adam and Eve. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, it says, And the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. In spite of what some would have us believe, there is nothing wrong with having your money in your hand. However, your heart can be deadly. The truth of the matter is that this farmer was not condemned for being successful, but he was a fool for thinking that he was the master of his own destiny. James chapter 4 also addresses the issue of planning for the future, but without considering God's will. James chapter 4, verse 13 through 16, it says, Go to now, or come now, ye that say, Today or tomorrow we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy and sell, and get gain, and make profit. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, If the Lord will, we shall live, and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings, or ye rejoice in your arrogance. As such rejoicing is evil. Consider the arrogance of his belief. God calls it boasting. He calls it arrogance. Thinking that we are in control of our future is sort of like an old cowboy who lassoed a train engine and said, "I've got you now," it's going to be dragged along. And so with the man or woman who thinks, and so it is the case with the man or woman who thinks it is that they have control over their own life. The scenario in our text is that of a businessman or a farmer planning ahead and bragging about a future that he knows nothing about and is powerless to control. His attitude says that I can make it on my own and I can control the events of my life. I can stand foursquare against the winds of circumstance, and it is no problem. I will make it. But to boast of the future is to play God and puts us in the same category as this man, the rich man that God called a fool. As we consider the rich farmer, we see a man who obviously had not given much consideration to the uncertainty of life. Going back to James chapter 4, verse 14, it says, "Whereas you know not where it shall be on the morrow." In other words, you do not know what is going to happen tomorrow. The only thing that we can know for certain is that things do not always go the way that we plan or the way that we think that they might. 1,000 things can come along to change well-laid plans. Proverbs 27 verse 1 reminds us, "Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth." Sadly, this rich man in our story is going to find out just how certain life can be. This successful farmer had obviously forgotten about the brevity of life. James, again, chapter 4, verse 14 says, "For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away." Life is short, and the older we get, the shorter it gets. It seems like we've blinked our eyes and we're coming up on the end of this year. And I'm told that it's going to continue to speed up as we age. Yeah, there's some nodding. Karen's back there going, mm-hmm. Look at Psalm chapter 39, verse 5. "Behold, thou hast made my days as a hand's breadth, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity." Another way of putting that would be, every man at his best state is but a vapor. Sadly, this man in our text, like so many today, had forgotten all about God's will. In James chapter 4, verse 15, it says, "For we ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that." Everything about us, our hopes, our dreams, our plans must come under the lordship of Christ. We can't see the future nor control it, but God can. This fact alone tells me that it makes good sense. It makes good sense to commit our future to Him rather than to our own devices. I don't think that we have to preface every statement in regard to our future with the actual words, "Lord willing," or "if God will," or something along the lines of that. I don't think we're called to be so ritualistic as that. However, the idea should be in our thoughts when we're planning our future. The reason for this is obvious. We do not know what is going to happen between now and tomorrow. We've all heard stories of people who died suddenly. Many of us know people who died suddenly. And if we really thought, and we were honest with ourselves, we could be next. This brings us to the second reason why it is that God called this man a fool. He was a fool for thinking that acquisitions of material goods are life's highest aim. Luke chapter 12, verse 15. "And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not of the abundance of things which he possesseth." We can sense from verse 19 that he was a worshiper of the god of materialism. He says in verse 19, "And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry." Notice that conversation that he has with himself. He tells himself that he has plenty of things stored up and that he could just relax and enjoy life for many years to come. I find it somewhat significant that the four major translations, the ASV, ESV, KJV, and NKJV, all use the word soul as he addresses himself. He was trying to fill a void in his soul. The idea of a God-shaped vacuum, and he was trying to fill it full of things. He believed that his wealth would bring him ease and contentment. For this, God calls him a fool. Apparently, this man has never stopped to consider the multitude of things that could easily rob him of his materials. Loss of wealth to theft, runaway inflation, loss of his health, family troubles, and the list really could go on and on and on. And so it is when we draw our last breath, we will leave everything behind. We're not going to take anything with us. And it may be a little or it may be a lot, but we're going to leave it behind for someone else. Our houses, our cars, our bank accounts, our stocks and bonds, all left behind for children or their family members. Even the items on our person, the watch, the wedding rings, or other jewelry, our wallet with credit cards and cash, all left behind. We would do well to remind ourselves of this fundamental truth from time to time. When we look into our stock portfolio, if we have one, when we look at those prized possessions that might be worth a lot of money, what do we see? What do we think about? I'm sure you've heard that saying, you can't take it with you. This statement is, in a way, half true. You can send it on ahead by investing it into the Lord's Word. Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 21 says, "Lay up not for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For your treasure is that your heart will be also." The truth is, the best investment that you can make is a spiritual one. The only treasure that is guaranteed to be there when you need it. That's spiritual treasure. It is the only retirement account that cannot be affected by a world crisis or by economic collapse or what have you. This man was also a fool for not giving to God glory for his blessings. He was supremely ungrateful to God. In all his considerations, he removed God from his plans. We see no mention of God coming from his lips, and even though he enjoyed all of the wealth at the hand of the Lord, there is no offering, no almsgiving. There's no care for those who have nothing. There's no glory for our Heavenly Father whatsoever. Look back in the text and see how many times he refers to God. We'll go ahead and look back at that text. Yes, 6 times he uses the pronoun I. And then 5 times he uses the pronoun my. He says, "What shall I do? I have no room where to bestow my fruits." And this he said, "This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years." So 11 times he refers to himself, but not once does he consider God. Consider the words of Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 10. "When thou hast eaten and art full or satisfied, then thou shalt bless the Lord thy God for the good land which he has given thee." If the rich man ever had heard these words, he didn't take them to heart, or else he forgot about them. We don't see him blessing the Lord. That is expressing gratitude. And for this, also, he is called a fool. But this man also was a fool for not having thought of eternity. Everything was about the here and the now. A little bit about the future. His future here on earth. Did you notice that the rich man of the story is not named? It puts me to mind the story of the rich man and Lazarus. That rich man isn't named either. He is only referred to as a certain rich man. His name didn't matter because it was not found in the book of life. If you think about it, anybody who did wrong in any of these stories or any of these accounts, the ones who did wrong If their names are mentioned, it's for historical purposes, like historical account purposes. The rest, that wouldn't put to date certain things, they're not mentioned. None of the Pharisees are mentioned by name, except for Nicodemus, who, as far as we can tell, was a follower of Christ by the end. Such is the plight of those who ignore God's invitation to receive His grace. Here was a man who died just as he lived, with no regard for his standing with God. If there is if there is any lie that the devil manages to really tell us, it isn't that heaven doesn't exist or that God doesn't exist. Those are easy enough to prove. It isn't that hell doesn't exist, because if heaven does, then so does hell. And it's not that the devil doesn't exist. It's simply this: there's no hurry to prepare. We have time. We have plenty of time. It's the ultimate lie. Why think about eternity right now? There's plenty of time for that. Let's worry about what's going to happen now. This is like a vapor. It'll be gone in an instant. Let's focus on this while we have it. Before drawing the study to the close, I want to mention one negative answer that can be found as to why it is that God called this man a fool. God did not call this man a fool because he obtained his wealth by unscrupulous means. That's not me saying that it's okay to obtain your wealth by unscrupulous means. But nothing in this text indicates the rich man cheated or lied or took advantage of others to obtain his wealth. As far as we know, he prospered because of hard work, because of diligent effort. And of course, God would have his hand in his prosperity as well. Perhaps he was the kind of man that people in the community looked up to and admired. I mention this because many today have no idea that, or they have this idea that they are good simply because they are not bad. Some try to justify the lack of obedience to the gospel, saying, I'm a good person, I'm honest, I don't hurt anybody, I don't steal anything, and that's all well and good. But serving God is more than just negatives. There must be the positive of obedience. Hebrews chapter 5 verse 9 says, "And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him." Matthew chapter 7 verse 21 says, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven." If you are not a child of God or a Christian, you need to keep this in mind when it is you pat yourself on the back for not being as bad as you could be. That's not what it's about. So if you're here this morning, you have another opportunity to not be like this man. To not be a foolish man. To not take those things which God has given you selfishly and holding them to yourself, giving no thought for thanks. And giving no thought for your future, your eternal future. Let's recognize the source of all our blessings and express our heartfelt thanksgiving to him. But equally important, let's show our gratitude to God by obeying his will and serving him to the best of our ability. We have many things to be thankful for. As I have said this morning, one of those things, really the thing we have to be most thankful for, is the fact that Christ died for us. That we have salvation through him. That those who believe on him should not perish but have everlasting life. And that those who believe and are baptized shall be saved. We have that promise. If you do not yet have that promise for yourself, if you have not yet believed or baptized and have been baptized, you can do so tonight. We have water. It's only a little cold. You have the opportunity to do so right now. If there's anything else that you need, prayers for the church, you need to come forward and return to Christ. To no longer be like this foolish man, you have the opportunity as well. And please, please come forward while it is that we stand together and we sing the invitation song.
Gina, my life, my